And time now for a business news update, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Stephen Carroll. Well, it's been a while, that's why, Stephen.
It's good to see you, Annette.
Anyway, you're going to be talking about the pandemic. Regardless of that, the business world keeps turning, and a Chinese company apparently is set to break records with its stock market launch. Is that right?
Hard to believe things like this can still happen in times like these, but this is the Ant Group in China. It's a technology titan, a financial technology titan. It runs the Alipay system, which is widely used for payments online and in shops there. The company was spun off from another Chinese tech giant, Alibaba, and it's majority owned by the country's richest man, Jack Ma. It's now on track for the biggest stock market launch ever in a dual listing in Hong Kong and Shanghai next week. Camille Nedelec has the story.
Investors have been bitten by the ant bug. Demands for shares in technology firm Ant Group was so high, order books were filled within an hour of launch. The company's IPO is set to become the largest ever, raising over 25 billion euros.
We are betting that Ant Group will be able to grow at a very high pace in the future.
It's the second brainchild of English teacher turned billionaire Jack Ma, who founded the e-commerce giant Alibaba. Already the richest man in China, the flotation is expected to make him another 22 billion euros. Ant's flagship service is Alipay, the world's largest mobile and online payments platform, and hugely popular with Chinese consumers. It's got more than 730 million active users, around half the Chinese population. During peak spending times, such as during holidays, the app can handle over 400,000 transactions per second, 6 times the capacity of Visa. Over 14 trillion euros in digital payments go through the app every year. In China, it's used to buy almost anything. Ant has also started offering loans to consumers and small businesses.
很多，比如我会用支付宝赶车，用支付宝买东西，淘宝上进行网购，买衣服裤子。
The company hasn't been free from controversy. In 2018, it apologized for sharing data on users' spending habits with its credit scoring arm. And there are fears that its data could also be misused by Beijing.
Now, you know it's a strange time when a 54% slump in net profits is considered good news, but that's what the bank HSBC has reported in its latest results that have been welcomed by investors. That's because the fall isn't as large as had been expected, and the Asian-focused bank is still considering paying a dividend to shareholders. The improvement in its results are because it now expects lower losses from loans, but still talking about losses close to $8 billion. The fall in profits even more dramatic for the oil giant BP. Its quarterly earnings down 96% compared to the same period last year. Demand for oil slumped during the pandemic, driving down prices. The picture, though, for BP has improved since its last financial results. It did turn a profit of $86 million for the 3 months to the end of September. That's after a loss of almost $6.7 billion in the previous quarter. In the United States, chances of a fresh economic stimulus package have become even slimmer. After the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, the US Senate has now finished up until after next week's election. It's not due to sit again until November 9th, which means very little chance of anything being agreed before then. House Leader Nancy Pelosi said earlier on Monday that she was still optimistic a deal could be reached. She's been discussing a plan with the Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, which would include another round of cash payments for Americans, reinstating extended benefits for workers who've been laid off, plus more money for schools, among other things. But any deal reached between Democrats and the White House still faces stiff opposition from Republicans who control the Senate. Let's take a look at how the share markets are digesting all of that news. BP and HSBC among the bright spots on European markets in trading today. Investor gloom still hanging over the markets, though, driven by worries over rising coronavirus cases and that lack of a deal on the much-needed economic stimulus in the United States. HSBC shares up over 6% in London a short time ago. Here in France, the number of people out of work fell sharply in the 3 months to the end of September. Now, the figures for people who are registered as full-time unemployed fell by 11.5% after a record jump in the previous 3 months. The jobless numbers, though, still almost 10% higher than they were in the same period last year. Now, the tourism industry has been one of those hardest hit by the pandemic. The extended curfew measures in France, more bad news for the sector, which was hoping for a boost in business during the October school holidays.
Half-term holidays in the south of France are looking somewhat different this year. Foreign tourists have all but disappeared, and this family from eastern France will have to holiday under curfew. They'd been hoping for a bit of normality.
On avait choisi cet endroit spécifiquement parce qu'il n'y avait pas de couvre-feu. Et puis le couvre-feu est arrivé et dans notre région et ici. Et on a quand même décidé de maintenir les vacances pour prendre l'air, effectivement, pour en profiter.
Visits to local museums are in, but eating out for dinner is off the table. And the family are readjusting their holiday budget accordingly.
On se fait peut-être plus plaisir sur le restaurant du midi, étant donné qu'il n'y en a pas le soir. Et puis peut-être plus de sorties en voilier, des choses comme ça qu'on n'aurait peut-être pas faites.
Visitor numbers in the south of France have fallen from 12 million in previous years to just 6 million in 2020. And hotels are at just 30% occupancy over the French bank holiday on the 1st of November. Since the curfew was announced, they've lost 80 nights of reservations, and the manager is trying to keep costs down.
Nous avons décidé de fermer 2 étages afin de simplifier un petit peu la logistique de nos femmes de chambre.
All employees here are on a government furlough scheme.
Nous sommes en pleine période de congé. L'hôtel devrait être plein et c'est très frustrant d'avoir cet hôtel qui fonctionne au ralenti.
It's a record-breaking crisis for the area, with business slashed by almost half, resulting in 2.5 billion euros worth of losses.
Finally, for me, the British publisher Bloomsbury has seen its biggest profits for the first half of the year in a decade. That's thanks to a big rise in sales of ebooks and physical books during the pandemic. Pre-tax profits at Bloomsbury were up by 60% compared to last year. Among its bestsellers over the period were Reni Eddo-Lodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race and Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City House of Earth and Blood. I'm about halfway through Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. I don't know if you've read it.
I want to. In fact, both titles
On the
are
list.
on my Christmas list.
In case anyone is watching.
Hint, husband. Anyway, Stephen Carroll, thank you so much for that. And that's it for the business news. And that's it for me. I'll be back after a short break. In the meantime, do stay with us here on France 24.